This short video was created by the Law Library at the University of Tasmania to introduce you to Austlii for finding case law. Austlii is a free online database with legislation, case law and legal journals. You can find Austlii by Googling it or going to this web address and saving it in your browser. Today we're going to look at a few techniques to use Austlii well. Generally speaking, what information you have will determine how you will approach Austlii. Some common types of information that you have include a case reference, also referred to as a case citation. You might need to find cases that interpret a particular section of legislation, or you may need to find cases on a particular topic. Sometimes someone will give you a vague description of a case, and you'll need to look it up with only pieces of information, such as one of the parties' names or the name of the court and the time frame. So we're going to take you through some examples of how you would search Austlii with each of these different types of information. So the first thing we're going to look at is the case reference or case citation. So before we begin, we'll just have a look at an example citation. Here you have two parties, so Tanner and Brown, the year, and then the location of the case. So just a couple things to note. With criminal cases, it's usually represented by, criminal cases are usually prosecuted by the Crown, which is represented by R, or the Queen. And instead of V, you would say the Queen against Brown. In this case, it's a civil case, so you would say Tanner and Brown. Sometimes parties' names are kept private, confidential, for certain reasons, so their names would be represented by a letter or two letters. So we're just going to go into Austlii and we're going to look up a case by the citation that we have. So we're going to start off by finding Austlii online, and you could put your citation in here and search across all the databases, but that will give you a lot of results and will be a bit of a time waster. So the technique we recommend here is to go straight into LawSite and enter your citation here. As you can see, LawSite gives you a few options, so you can also just add the party names and any other details that you have. This case has come up, so here the information that LawSite gives us is the party names, a link to the text of the case, which we can open up. It gives us the court details and the date of the hearing, and also any cases that refer to this case, any journal articles that talk about our case, the legislation that our case has cited, and the cases and articles that our case has cited. So it gives us a lot of extra information about our case, which can be quite helpful. With the text of the case itself, we can just read it online, but if we want to save a copy, we can just go up to download and save a rich text copy. We've downloaded a rich text copy. As you can see, our reference is at the top here. We've got the court, the citation details, the parties to the case, the filing number, the delivery of the decision, where it was delivered and by whom, so the name of the judge. A couple things to note is most cases will have some catchwords. These have been created by the judge or the judge's associate, and that'll just give you a quick glance summary of the case, what's covered. You'll have the representative, so who acted on behalf of each of the parties, and then you'll go into the reasons for judgment, which may cover a little bit of the facts of the case, what was considered by the judge, the legal principles or legislation considered, and their decision and reasons for decision. And just to recap, so we want to go into LawSite from the Austlii page, enter our citation details, select the hyperlinked citation, and then download the rich text format. That's how we search for a case by citation. the next thing we're going to do is look at cases that consider a piece of legislation. So we may have a section of an act that we want to see how that has been interpreted by the judges. So here's a couple of examples, and we'll just have a look at the first one together. And that's the Sentencing Act 1999 of Tasmania, in section 27. So I'll show you how to see what cases have had a look at and interpreted that particular piece of legislation. Okay, so the first step is to look up the piece of legislation. So we know that this is Tasmanian legislation. So we'll select the Tasmanian Consolidated Acts, and we can look up the piece of legislation by name. I like to use Command F just to find it quickly. So here we have the 1997 Act. And we want to see if there's been any cases on section 27, because that's of particular interest to us. So we're going to go into section 27. We found the wording of the Act in its current form. And then we're going to go to the right-hand side and see who it's been cited by. So this is referred to as a note-up reference. So here we can see quite a significant number, 33 documents, have cited our piece of legislation. So you might want to pause now for a moment and see if you can use Austlii to look up the Family Violence Act of 2004. Go into section 11 and see if there have been any cases that have discussed that piece of legislation, and do a search that way. Once you're ready to return, you can unpause and we'll continue with the presentation. So just to recap, when we're searching legislation, the recommended technique is to go in and find the piece of legislation, either by searching or browsing, find the relevant section and select Note Up. So a third common way to do case law research is to search for cases on a particular topic. So when you start thinking about that topic and how you're going to search for it, I have a few tips for you. So what I generally do is write down on my computer or just on a scrap piece of paper what are my search terms. And then I might think of some of the synonyms, so similar terms that might be used in the case law. Then I want to consider maybe technical terms. What sort of language is the judge likely to use? So for example, rather than say car, the judge might use the term motor vehicle, and I might include that in my search. Also, terms that are used in the legislation might be useful. So grievous bodily harm is an example of that, or possession of a firearm, or something like that. And if you're using a phrase, then you want to put it in quotation marks. That will avoid the database searching for the individual words, but will search for the entire phrase. So now that I've got my different terms and phrases ready to go, I might want to think about putting them together. So then I can do a Boolean search. So there's three main ways to do a Boolean search. So you can do an AND search, which means putting the two terms together, and that will locate all of the cases that have both of those terms. So for example, here we might say grievous bodily harm and ICE. We can do multiple versions, so we could do grievous bodily harm and drugs and ICE. So we could have cases that cover all of those terms. Or we may want to have a case that broadens our search results, so we're not getting too many cases that get all of our terms. So any case on grievous bodily harm or drugs or what have you. An example of how you could use that would be to put your synonyms, so your similar words, together. So you might be interested in cases that talk about police interrogation and either admissibility or evidence. So that'll pick up all of the cases that have police interrogation and admissibility, or all the cases that have police interrogation and evidence. So that would be another way to broaden your search results, so that you're not missing out on cases because you haven't included all of those synonyms or all the terms that are being used in the cases. The third option with an advanced search is you can exclude specific terms. So you might be getting a lot of results that relate to something that's actually really not quite relevant. So for example, you're looking for police interrogation cases and evidence cases, but you keep coming up with cases that relate to mental health, and you're not really interested in mental health in this particular circumstance, so you might want to exclude mental health. So you might say police interrogation but not mental health. So that would be a way to do it. We're just going to do an example of how to use the advanced search. Going back to Austlii, again we can search across all the databases, but for more quality results I recommend you use the advanced search. You'll then want to put in your search terms or your search phrase that you've come up with. You then need to put in a date range and an end to that date range. And rather than selecting all the databases, you might just want to look at case law in this area. And so that's your advanced search. Now you might want to give the second search phrase a try, or something of your own, to have a look and practice with the advanced search option. Just to recap, searching by topic, so we want to go to that main search bar and then select advanced search, enter our search terms, refine our dates and select our database, and then review our results and have a look through those. So the other way to use Austlii is to browse through it, and that might be useful in the circumstance where you have only partial information. So you might just have bits and pieces. Rather than searching endlessly, you might do browse and narrow in on the cases that fit within the information that you have. So I'm just going to do a browse demonstration just so you can see how that works. Okay, so Austlii allows us to browse all of our databases, or we could select a specific database that we're interested in having a look through. So here we're interested in maybe in Tasmanian jurisdiction, and specifically we're interested in case law. So we want to look at case law in the Supreme Court of Tasmania. It might be that our search parameters are actually in 2017 there was a case, and here we can see we've got all the cases in the Supreme Court of Tasmania listed here by month. We might have, for example, we might have a partial name, so we might know that in this case one of the parties was the state of Tasmania, so we'll do a Control F find, and we'll go through all the cases that the state of Tasmania was involved. So Tasmania and Chatters, Farhat, Joseph, Holden in the state of Tasmania, Tasmanian Oates, and so forth. So that might be a way that we can use browse effectively to have a look around. It would be beneficial if you want to take a moment and browse through what's in Austlii to be able to effectively use that tool. So partial information, we might want to browse, we want to refine our browsing to the particular bits of information we have, and then review our results accordingly. So we've covered a few techniques to use Austlii. We sort of start with what information we have at a given time. If we have a citation, we might go to law site. If we're wanting to search for case law that's considered some legislation, we might want to use the note up function. And advanced search is recommended for topic searches, and we've looked at how to think about the way that we define our search parameters, put together our search terms so that we can get the most targeted results, and then also how to browse through Austlii. So while that might not be the quickest way to do it, it might be that you only have partial information, and that can bring up the case that you're looking for without all the information already on hand, which is very common, unfortunately. Generally, a few tips. So you might get a query. Somebody has just been to the magistrate's court and they want to see a copy of their case. This does come up. So not all magistrates' cases are published on the magistrate's court's website or in Austlii. So it might not be in there. If it's not in Austlii and it's a lower court decision, then you might want to contact the court registry or advise them to contact the court registry. And it may be that they can get a transcript if they're a party to the matter, or it may be that they can ask that the court publishes their decision on their website, and then that'll be automatically picked up by Austlii. Another tip is it may be that your case has been picked up by a law report series. If you're going to court, you do need to have the most authoritative version of the case, so not necessarily the unreported version of the case. So you can go into a law site within Austlii, and you can find out if any law reports have picked up the case, because there'll be multiple citations available. And that's something the Law Library reference desk can help you with. Also, the note up function, my final tip, may be probably note up. So it may be that you can use it for finding which cases have considered legislation, but you can also look up what cases have considered your case. So you may find a case through your topic search which you think, oh, that sounds great, and you want to have a look at other cases that have considered your case and what do they say, or discussed your case in some way. So you can also use the note up function for other cases. And it may be that you get some tips and tricks along the way as you start to use Austlii. Please feel free to share them with your fellow students and the library. We're always happy to learn more. It's a fairly new version of the site that's just come up, so there's probably all sorts of things that we still need to learn about it. Well, thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, please feel free to come down to the Law Library if you're in the neighbourhood. Otherwise, you can call us on the numbers here, or the email through your questions. We're always happy to hear from you. Thank you.